a lot of the people who start coffee companies, they're like, yeah, coffee comes from around the world, but they zoom to the details that they know, that they love as founders, right? Like they're like, oh yeah, but like it's at this altitude and it's this and this and this, and it's like the average person is in coffee, or at least my theory was like me before I had that cup. And so like instead of zooming to like some level of detail that isn't gonna like get someone else excited, let's start with the fact that it comes from around the world.
All right, folks, welcome back to another in-person You're Not Your ROAS. Today, I have the Java slanger, the stats man, the best-looking guy in Austin with an incredible house, wonderful human. Actually, I don't even know what's your last name? How do I pronounce it?
Shoemake.
Shoemake. I always want to say Schwemke for some reason. You get that?
Schwemke.
That's totally off, right?
No, but I've never heard that. And that's a fun one.
You see that
alter ego material.
We're breaking news, right?
Yeah.
When you drunk at the bar.
We got to build a character around that.
We were on the boat last night talking and joking with one of the guys. I guess his wife, when she has like her lady day, she turns and they've made an alter ego for her because that's not
nice.
But that's not here nor there, folks. We're going to get into Michael's incredible story. I guess first, how did we meet? Was it Dr. Mike? Was Ruscia?
I think
for the guys' dinner.
I think so. It's always tough to tie back to the first kind of thread in Austin. Like everybody's so connected. Like Clark Nolan is kind of like one of the many like hubs that kind of I meet most of my people through, but probably from Mike.
Yeah, because we do a little guys' dinner out here, and Michael's one of the just most fun humans. You put this guy around a dinner table and it's just laughs and fun. But I guess I don't know a ton. I know about where you are now, but let's start back kind of. How did you start Atlas? Or actually, when was your first foray into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it's a great question, man. I started getting the itch back in 2009. So I was just about to graduate college. It's right when the 4
What'd you study?
I started in engineering and then I switched to business.
I was engineering and then economics.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You went to IU? Did we talk about this?
Yeah.
I was at Purdue.
No.
Yeah.
How did I not know this?
This is one of the dinner. It's too many drinks over dinner.
Too many drinks over dinner. Boilermaker.
Yeah, man.
Unbelievable. So you were Drew Brees era or no?
A little later.
A
little later.
Okay.
I wish.
Yeah.
That was when we were good.
Yeah. How interesting. Oh my gosh, West Lafayette.
Yeah, man. And I studied economics.
The Indiana. Oh no. Oh my God. How did I not?
Like yeah, I don't know, man.
I need to cut some stuff out of my life, improve, get some ginkgo. Okay, so engineering major, you became a statistic like me. So what kind of engineering?
I didn't get that far.
Okay.
I was going to do IE, which is industrial engineering.
That's kind of cool.
But it's like how you like lay out warehouses for efficiency and kind of process design. They call it imaginary engineering in the engineering world because it's like the least
prestigious kind of thing. Or
I mean, I don't know. The CEO of UPS went to Purdue. He's an IE grad, but
not making nothing.
But it was just the reason I liked it. It was the most business-like of all the engineering disciplines. And then
I was a double E major, and it was
that's
horrific.
The worst.
I was doing like 17. I literally was doing math problems that were 4 or 5 pages long. It was atrocious.
Where the answers are still letters. Like I've had some war stories from college, Purdue engineering, before I got the hell out of there.
And for people that don't know, like there's a joke in kind of for engineers that like an extroverted engineer will look at your shoes. Like these are the most non-social people, and I'm this extrovert bomb in there trying to like schmooze. You go to lab, oh dude,
cracking jokes during the exam.
Yeah, everybody's so serious. Anyway, I'm sorry. So IE and then economics.
Yeah, studied economics and really, a lot of the like econometric, like more like predictive modeling side of econ, and kind of at the same time, it was right about the time that. So like at the time, like Magento was the big e-com. It was pre-Shopify days, which meant it was a pain in the ass to build a website, super clunky. And apologies if anybody from Magento listens to this.
I mean, it's still candidly fairly clunky. It's more. It's almost like a headless solution in a weird way.
If you look at like Built With, some of the biggest websites on the internet are still built on Magento, and it blows my mind.
They do work,
legacy system stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, read the the 4-hour work week was really kind of like one of the first things that piqued my interest. Yeah, well, and the reason is like, well, the thing that got me excited about it was this whole like drop shipping e-commerce thing. Right?
Oh, no way.
So, and this is back again, like, man, like a couple different drop shipping sites exist and they're super jank. Magento's around and super jank. So I was like, man, like, unlike the marketing classes that I was getting in college, because I took some marketing as part of the business school, which were super fluffy. Like, oh yeah, like, you know, this is kind of best practice and you can say this. And it wasn't about e-com where you can track everything. You know, once I started learning about drop shipping and how that works, it's like, oh, okay, well, there's like some math to be done here, right? It's like,
it's all arbitrage. It's an arbitrage.
Totally. What's my cost per click? What's my conversion rate? What's my kind of gross margin on a product? And, you know, the argument from the 4-hour work week, and it's been 10 years since I've read it, but was just kind of like, hey, like you could have slightly less margins, but you could grow from 1 to 10 to 100x and not have to hire more people.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, you can still kind of like fly the fighter jet and just be like a one-man army and do that. And so I don't know. It's funny because the Atlas story is not that, but that's kind of like, you know, it was interesting. That's kind of where I got steeped into. And I think the biggest lesson from anybody who knows how to drop ship or has thought about it is like, you have to know your numbers. Like,
not only do you have to know your numbers, usually the drop shippers that I know, even if they're quasi-successful, they're some of the best operators I know, because there's no, like, in a weird way, brand can build in like quote unquote margin, because you can get LTV on the back, and like drop shipping is essentially an AOV business. Like I gotta get my money on that first purchase.
Yeah, so you mean your acquisition has to be on point.
Exactly.
If any step of the process has to be on point, it's like you're a killer at paid acquisition.
Exactly, and that
so keep you sharp.
I think it's actually a great way to cut your teeth for sure. I think drop shipping or agency, the challenge with drop shipping that I found was,
it's flooded now, man.
Well, it's done.
Yeah,
Well, because I think for me, like my thesis was, again, it was an arbitrage game, and Facebook ads were so underpriced.
So were Google back in the day.
That's fair play. That's a fair play. And so there was so much arbitrage to be had. The targeting was so good that you could literally build a business off of paid media only. Like there's a certain aspect, like there's kind of a saying, like you're essentially buying revenue, but you could buy it at X and sell it at Y, and like life is good.
Arbitrage, man.
That's it.
Amazon partially killed it.
Yeah.
Amazon killed or will kill, or you know, I don't know, will kill. That's pretty bold. But anything doesn't have a brand, anything that's price dependent. I mean, that's kind of like, how are you competing with Amazon for things? Well, I guess we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but you know, if marketing is demand capture or demand gen,
yes,
anything demand capture, like people searching for something, and that's price sensitive and doesn't have a brand, like Amazon's going to eat your lunch.
Eat your lunch, dude. And the other thing with that is, once people start to see those numbers, then you just get the kind of knock-on effects of just a flood of competitors. And the irony that I find in all of that is, for me, the most commoditized spaces is when brand matters the most.
Yeah, for sure.
In like such a weird way,
look
right?
At alcohol,
liquid death.
Yeah.
Water. It's one of my favorite brands on the planet.
Man, I love finding those stories. Anytime you see something that flies in the face of convention, it's like there is magic to be made. You know,
I'm so
like
such
they
a
make water, man. It's water.
And candidly, like it's not like you could objectively say like Mountain Valley, or like there's some waters that are legitimately like, they're really good.
Yeah, but the water space, even more than the alcohol space, like there are people who will be like, oh yeah, like this, you know, this tequila is really good. But in the water space, it's like, oh man, it's sparkling water.
It's hard.
Like,
it's like not this.
They're not even making a quality argument, right? Are they saying we're the best?
No.
Like their packaging tell you anything about the quality of it?
That's
No,
plastic, baby.
It's interesting, man.
I love it. Before we move on from your college days, did you ever do Breakfast Club? You had to, right? Can you,
I don't remember too many, but I'll tell everybody what Breakfast Club is. Yeah, thank you.
Because this is the only thing. So for people that don't know, Indiana University and Purdue University, Indianapolis is in the center. Purdue's about an hour north of the city. Bloomington IU is about an hour south of the city. And I think there's like 4 state schools in Indiana, but those are essentially the 2 big ones. There's Indiana State and
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
It's not a state school.
It's private. It's Catholic. Indiana State. Anyways, or Ball State. That was it. Ball State, Indiana State, and then Purdue and Indiana. But they're the big rivals. So for people that are like from Texas, it's kind of like the UT, Rice, or
Texas Tech, or
Texas
one of those.
Tech. Exactly. Yeah. So that's the stage late. So the reason I say this is because I'm a Purdue hater, but goddamn, I got to give Breakfast Club up to you guys. It's the craziest experience. Man.
It's the only thing in a party level that Purdue has on IU. And it's basically Halloween, every home football game for breakfast. So the bars open up. There's no more. I think this is the most degenerate holiday.
It's the most degenerate.
The bars that open, I think, at like 6 a.m. and people pregame this, and because you're not going to get dressed up in a costume and not. My favorite part about Breakfast Club is watching the people walk of shame in costume at like midday.
My favorite was you go into the bar when it's dark, and you come out when it's light. So for like the 11 o'clock games,
it's weird.
And then you just see this rush of it's almost like zombies in costumes. And then you'll see at halftime, just the stands are just a war zone for people that went too hard, and you just see people pass it.
It's wild, man. I can't.
It's the craziest experience.
I can't. Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I'm not a morning person. I wasn't in college for sure. But I only did it a few times. But it was crazy.
If you're young and you have the chance, and you're in Indiana, a Purdue home game for Breakfast Club is a absolute experience. And the stadium's not terrible. The stadium's not horrible. The campus is atrocious. So much concrete.
100%.
Bloomington's way prettier.
My thing about Purdue is like it's a school of engineers. And the way they designed the road, I mean,
irony, right?
I can't talk smack about my own school.
Yeah.
Except for that.
Yeah.
Education was great though.
Yeah.
It's so cold. There's nothing else to do.
Top tier school, especially in the engineering vectors, aerospace. I mean, absolute top tier school. Okay. So you find the 4-hour work week. You've been enlightened. You're slanging from Alibaba now. Did you build a business from that? Or
I built one. I built one from it. You're going to laugh. It was called ispoilmypup.com.
I love pet. I love dog.
Well,
dog
this is back in 2010. Let me think. Actually, yeah, I was in DC at the time because that's when I got my first job in DC. And
are you from Indiana?
No, I grew up in Arkansas.
Arkansas. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
there's some pretty spots there.
Oh, it's a beautiful state.
Yeah,
beautiful state. So ispoilmypup.com. Big trend was humanization of pets, right? Like, and this is kind of like early-ish for that, and it's like all pink. It's like a pink website, pink text logo, ridiculous, just absolutely. Maybe just the logo was pink, I don't know, but I just remember thinking how funny it was that like me, a non-dog owner, had this. And actually, when I look back on it and look, I found the old Google Analytics account the other day. It didn't do terrible. I'll tell you what tripped me up was that again Magento. It was so clunky, and it was like a side thing for me, but it was a great way to learn. Like. First dip into AdWords, first dip into...
and you're doing everything?
I did everything. Yeah, well, I mean, it was dropship.
Right. No, I mean, but like in terms of like the operations, like you're running the tech stack,
yeah,
you're running...
like I get home from work and yeah, and it was nothing at the time, right? Like it never got to be like a thing. I think we made like 30 sales lifetime, like in a month.
Amazing.
Like in a month or two. Looking back, I'm like, oh, that was actually pretty good, but...
when that first sale hits, where you're like, oh my gosh.
It's a feeling, man. Shopify right? was onto something with the cha-ching sound. There's this dopamine. There's nothing that hits more dopamine than early stage company and that cha-ching sound.
Somebody gives you money.
It just lights you up,
like,
man.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so dog stuff. What were you doing in DC?
I worked for Geico.
No way.
Yeah, I worked in insurance as like a predictive modeler.
Oh my gosh, like the Ben Stiller movie where you were putting like the...
it wasn't an actuary. No.
Okay.
No, thank goodness, no. No, well, we don't have to get too into it because it gets pretty obscure, but like basically actuaries are in charge of, if you're a DJ, actuaries are the ones that like control kind of the overall levels, like how much rate should we charge overall for a given coverage. And then what I did was more like, okay, but like what about for 18 to 24-year-old males who have this, and so like we kind of
almost build the cohorts within the...
Yeah, we're doing all the little like sub-frequencies and they're, just really trying to match like rate to risk. But
so you've always been pretty heavily in the numbers. You've always been a pretty numbers guy.
It's a good I don't know.
It's so funny because your personality is like so fun, fluffy. Like I never knew any of this about you.
I think to some extent, like if you're good at that stuff and you're social, or at least kind of are good at talking to people. Like for me, like one of my strengths in my old jobs was just like I could learn about all the different things in the business. I could think about these data problems in a different way. Whereas someone who got their PhD, maybe they're building a model and they're trying to get like just an ounce more of improvement on the model instead of like shopping with data vendors to try to find some data that we've never seen if it's predictive or not. And so it's kind of that like, in A/B testing, like, are you testing just one little element, or are you like blowing up the page and starting over? And like I call that like ABC testing. And like, so like C testing is like a whole new approach. B testing is like incremental. And like, there's studies about how like, if you want to find like the global maximum result, you need a combination of kind of like big swing tests and like increment test.
I love that. For people that aren't tracking and didn't do fancy math like Michael over here, there's essentially two maxims, right? Maximums. There's the local maximum, which is essentially local to the environment, and then there's the global maximum, which is essentially, you could almost think of it like in layers of TAM, if you will. So ideally, if you can reach that global maximum, that's essentially, if you think of it in economics terms, that's the equilibrium where that'll clear the market. Like that's the ideal situation
I always
for
think
you.
of it as like a 2x2 graph, where it's like, if you're on like a current version of let's just say like conversion rate is the y-axis.
Y-axis, yeah.
For any given page, there's like the best it can be is some peak of a hill.
Really good.
But then there's some other page that if you started from that page, like you might start a lower place on that hill, but you can iterate yourself up. And whichever the best like substantiation, it's kind of an abstract concept, but the best substantiation of that is like the best converting.
Yep. It's so helpful. So DC, doing insurance.
Yeah.
Now what?
So kind of bounced around in insurance for a while, did that from like 2015, 2009 was when I graduated to 2015. So took a job at a different insurance company in Boston.
Okay.
Awesome ecosystem to kind of plug into. And I really got the entrepreneurial spirits going again. Worked out of the kind of nights and weekends, and whenever I would pop over to the Cambridge Innovation Center, which is kind of like
oh, really? Yeah, that's fun.
And there's a lot of really cool startups out of there, but surprisingly there was like a decent, you'd expect them to be like biotech or whatever, but there's a lot of e-com
Klaviyo's out of there.
Yeah,
they're on the warpath for
I used to, man, I
the
met a lot of their early team.
Yeah.
Their office schools on Boylston Street.
Yeah.
Man, just like a different ways of applying data to different startups. Like I would just do kind of like, hey, but like, what are you working on? Like, how can I help? And the fun thing about like being the data guy or the analyst is like whenever you analyze any business problem, you learn intimately about that business problem and like how to think about it. And so whether it was like plugging into somebody who had an email program that did, 10 plus mil a year, and like building like an NLP model about like, oh, which types of words and this like random stuff. But you kind of learn like, oh, well, this is how you build a business just based on email that does 10 million a year, like through that process. And I had, other friends that, like we would do more stuff like top funnel, like, retention focus. And one of the things you learn through that too is just that some companies, man, like you could just nail one channel and blow up, and like learning what's possible within a thing kind of tells you how far there is to push within that thing. It helps you kind of prioritize.
I couldn't agree with you more, man, because we sit across almost 5,000-6,000 stores, 50 plus
you see
country.
It all,
dude, especially when I go to these events and stuff, there'll be people that are coming where it's like, maybe running like a 3 to 7 person team, and they're just cranking $20 million a year on some random gene company or something.
It's usually Facebook is the one trick pony. Facebook, Instagram. Yeah. For a lot of people. It's never been ours, but for a lot of companies it is.
Well, and I think too, there's a certain aspect of like shiny object syndrome or opportunity cost where, man, unless you're super niche and even though like in my head, I'm trying to build the case. I think at $100, even $200 million run rate, you just really can be on Meta and Google and still slay. Like we have some data where TikTok is decent for clothing and fashion accessories, which kind of makes sense, but it's still like a tiny tertiary channel to Meta and Google.
It makes sense for like what you see is what you get. Products,
yes,
right? Like it's I mean.
So but I'm with you because I used to be like, hey, you should master all these channels, blah 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 blah, have more kind of acquisition paths, but the more and more I see, it's like
focus.
Focus is huge thing, man.
Yeah, man. That's like, what's the saying? It's like, and it's not perfectly applicable, but it's like more startups die from indigestion than they do from starvation. Like they're trying to do too many
That's
things.
a bar. I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite.
There's a Russian proverb that is the hunter that chases 2 rabbits catches none.
Oh yeah,
It's kind of same,
it's a
but
Russian
different.
proverb.
I
How do you
think
know
so.
it's Russian? I mean,
I don't know. Hey,
I like
over here. Whereas we're just throwing it down. Maybe
I like
maybe in the current climate we'll call it a Ukrainian proverb or
There it is.
or Eastern
European
European
I didn't mean to do
proverb.
that. I'm just like, that's super obscure, but good.
Yeah,
That's cool that you know that.
yeah, dude. You know me, all the random facts. So when did you jump out of insurance?
Yeah, so me and a really good friend from college had talked about starting something. We didn't know what, right? Like I was like, the biggest reason I left, it wasn't like, oh, I want to work for myself. A lot of people have their own kind of reason for starting a company. Some of it's like, I can't work for the man anymore. Da, da, da. Some of it's, it's different for everybody. For me, I think I was just fascinated by the space and being able to do it. Yeah, like the game. And so I was like, I'm going to take like 3 weeks off work and go. We went to Malibu, California, me and my really, really good friend, John, and popped into a coffee shop, of course. Like, oh, let's pull up to this coffee shop and like think about ideas, right?
The cliches are abounding.
Yeah, well, I mean, the truth is like prior to that day, like coffee really fell into the acquired taste bucket for me. Like I never had a cup of coffee because, think about it. Like if you're not into coffee, you don't seek it out. So when you have coffee, you have it at like events or gas stations or like Folgers or whatever, Starbucks maybe. But all that coffee is kind of burnt and gross and like over roasted. And they do that for consistency of product, right? Like Starbucks coffee needs to taste the same no matter where it is. So they just burn it to a pulp. And it will taste the same, but it's you tasting carbon. It's like going to a steakhouse and ordering a well-done steak. And apologies for anybody who likes well-done steak with ketchup. But if you went to a super nice steakhouse,
barbarians.
If you went to a super nice steakhouse and ordered a well-done steak,
they won't.
The chef,
they won't bring it out.
The chef's gonna come out. I mean, I'm talking like top-tier steakhouse, right? Chef's gonna come out. He's gonna say, the cow's name was Jeff. We took really good care of Jeff. He was massaged every day.
I can't do this.
And how would you like us to prepare it? Just as a terrible analogy for any. I mean, but and if you're like, yeah, I'll get them well done, that chef would cry. Like there would be tears, and then they would walk back to the kitchen. They probably, and you know what? If you get it burnt enough, you can't taste the difference between that
a hamburger.
And yeah, it tastes the same. It tastes the same because all you're tasting is the carbon from the cooking, right? So, point is, first coffee I'd had prior to this point, I'm like, oh, coffee's like, other things. Like people just say like, oh, I like it, and they trudge on through it, Yeah, well, I don't know. Beer has a craft market now, but yeah, like people just trudge on through it. People actually don't like it, Then I had this coffee, and it tasted fruity. So I was like, it tasted like I think it was like some fruit. I think it was like blueberry. And I was, we're sitting down to kind of have the conversation about what we want to do, and I was like, what? It was a slow day at the coffee shop, so I was just like, what? Like, this tastes fruity. Like, what is that? And he's like, oh, this coffee's from Ethiopia. He's like, it's a natural processed coffee. He's like, coffee's a fruit. I'm learning all these things. Like, coffee's a fruit. The coffee bean is actually inside this cherry, and depending on how they get that, in Ethiopia, it doesn't rain a whole lot, and so a lot of times they'll just lay this cherry out on these like raised beds in the sun, and like a sun-dried tomato, those things will kind of like dry out over the bean, and then they pick it out, and it imparts the fruit from like the cherry and that flavor. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. Like I had no idea coffee came from Ethiopia. Coffee's from Ethiopia, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's not Java. Somebody was telling me Indonesia and Java.
No, it's from.
I've been promoting
discipline. Because you haven't had me on the pod yet.
Exactly. See, this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to eradicate my ignorance.
So, I'm learning all these things. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like coffee's from Ethiopia. It can taste like fruit. It is a fruit. It can taste like fruit.
Yeah.
It actually tastes good. And so, we're kind of chatting through ideas. And one of the ideas that I had actually was like in the spirit of this dropship model was like, oh, like people are super into coffee. And like, I started looking at different markets, and like the espresso making machines are so expensive.
Dude, I've been in the market for one of them.
And the competition wasn't crazy. I'm like, man, like we can sell one of these machines for like, and this is what they sell for, like 5 to 10 to 20K, like the nice ones.
The Moroscos
and they're like gold,
all those.
they're gold. It's super cool.
100%.
It's super nice. It's like we can sell these, and like, for a time, and I don't know if this is still true, like in Google, like if you're selling $1,000 or $10,000 or $100 product, like the cost per clicks weren't linear. Like aggregation of the competition and the average margin for that thing that you're selling, right? Or the average like gross margin. And anyway, so I was like, oh, we'll do that. And then but through this experience, we're like, oh, but like this is cool. Like, what if we could like, talk like sell actual coffee? And like but it kept breaking my brain. I'm like, can't sell one bag of coffee. Like, I'm like, what? Let's say we sold it for $20. Like,
oh, the math doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm like, the math doesn't work based on what I knew to do, which wasn't Facebook. This is like right around the time that Facebook
even
was
a $20 conversion. That's
well, because your margins
gig.
are like what 7, 6.
It's a tough gig.
And if you're not doing it yourself, it's less. So anyway, he was the barista was like, hey, do you guys want anything else? And I was like, yeah, like I'd love to try a different one. He's like, okay, well, you try the one from Ethiopia, you try this one from Indonesia. And so the Indonesian one was really earthy. It was really like kind of had like some vegetal, like bell fruit or bell pepper, which doesn't sound good in coffee, but it was really interesting. And I was like, man, like I was like, I didn't know Indonesia did coffee either. And he was like, oh yeah, man, like over like 30 whatever countries grow coffee. He's like, and they all can taste different depending on like where they're from and all this stuff. And
so a bunch of parallels to wine then in that way,
yeah,
right? Where like it's not only geography, weather,
it's
time
soil,
of year,
grape type. It's very similar.
Yeah, how interesting.
But but again, like everybody's getting well done steaks.
Yep.
In terms of coffee, so they don't taste it.
Yeah.
So around the same time, I was getting really interested in subscription e-commerce, and like had a few friends that had been getting into that, and like there's a bunch like I think it was around the time like Dollar Shave Club and some of these companies were starting to blow up.
The Grip, they had a great exit.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the great for the
that's
acquirer, but hey, good on the entrepreneur.
There's a whole story about But so I was like, okay, well, what if we did a subscription where every month people could try coffee from a different country, and we, kind of like tell them about like why this country tastes like that, or this place in this country tastes like that, and like, like what a cool, no like selling a $20 bag of coffee after shipping isn't going to cut the mustard, but if someone stays for X amount of months, and then the added layer on top of that was like, okay, and then like I kind of know how we could analyze the data to figure out like what we would need to do to make retention better. You start to see kind of the funnel ecosystem from acquisition to retention, and with my background, I was like, oh, this is fun and a cool fit, and it was a perfect marriage of kind of like left brain, right brain. Like I love this idea, like. I'm a big believer when you learn something for the first time, like you're going to get these nuggets about that space that just like hit you like a ton of bricks. Cling to those because it's only going to be novel to you once. And people who have been in the space for 10 years, they might look past that.
Beginner's mind's a real thing, dude.
Yeah. Well, and you cling to those things and use them as part of your storytelling, because a lot of the people who start coffee companies, they're like, yeah, coffee comes from around the world, but they zoom to the details that they know, that they love as founders, right? Like they're like, oh yeah, but like it's at this altitude and it's this and this and this, and it's like the average person is in coffee, or at least my theory was like me before I had that cup. And so like instead of zooming to like some level of detail that isn't gonna like get someone else excited, let's start with the fact that it comes from around the world.
I think too where you guys really nail it is not only the detail, but the details wrapped up in a narrative. I think people experience the world in stories. And I think that's one of the coolest things that you guys do is there's such an incredible, compelling story around the coffee that it's kind of that, like the wine market, like a lot of the wine market isn't driven, or sneakers, for example, like a lot of the there's not a ton of like intrinsic value in these things. But when you wrap it in
people may not appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I mean, coffee's coffee, right?
Yeah.
Like whether it tastes good or better, that's totally like 100% a thing. But it's not like this is gold and this is platinum and there's actual intrinsic value. But when you wrap that in a story and you build a community around it, and then it gets so interesting. And anyways, I just wanted to gas you up there a little bit because I think that's one of the things that you guys do so well. Like I think you sell stories and monetize through coffee.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to. I think
you have to.
I think it's like
people don't buy products; they buy the stories.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%. And again, like zooming back to the Amazon thoughts, it's like the anecdote for everything being a product page that looks exactly the same, where you have minimal amount of space to tell your brand story. The anecdote to that is a story. Like if you're going to win in the D2C world, like you have to have a narrative that people buy into that enriches what someone's buying more than just price and features, right? Because if you're trying to compete on price and features, like, you know,
you're going to get Walmarted.
It's
you
tough,
just don't
man.
have the scale.
It's tough.
That's why I always try and tell people, because until you get to a certain scale, dude, you're always going to be a price taker, not a price setter.
Yeah.
Like until you get to the price setting stage, like you have to have something different than economics. Like you can't just be like, oh, we're going to be the cheapest, fastest, bestest. Like that's, and to your point, I find whenever you're competing on price, it's pretty much done. Like it's going to be, it's a race to the bottom. Somebody's going to undercut you. Somebody's going to take a loss just to get market share.
It also signals there's just no differentiation.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. So how did you guys, so you go from this, you have the epiphany in the coffee shop, did some Ethiopian, which I love, Indonesian coffee, fantastic. And now you're like, all right, what's the business model? Business model subscription. Now how do you marry
putting the, so first thought was, okay, like let's validate this idea, right? Like,
ooh, I love that.
And you know, in God we trust, also sees data. Like
trust but verify. Never Russian.
Let's,
look at that.
The you know, the 1.0 version of this was me just like spinning up a website, and Shopify, thank God, Shopify was around. This is a big plug for Shopify. Was spinning up a, you know, kind of using a template, spinning up a website. Again, like we didn't have like branded packaging, you know, so spinning up a website and trying to find someone who would do like private label for us or white label our stuff.
Yeah.
Like, they already have like beans that they'll package, and we'll put our, you know, logo on the bag and ship from them, and like kind of knowing that like we're going to get our lunch eaten on margin in the short term, but we're going to chase down the insight.
Was there an MOQ, like a minimum order quantity, or were you guys, it was kind of chill?
It's been so long.
Yeah.
It's been like 8 years. This is 2015. So December.
You guys have been around for 8 years.
Yeah.
That's so
we'll get
cool.
into the bootstrap story in a minute.
Let's go.
From like, you know, we were in that coffee shop like December 2014, and from then until like April, found a supplier, built up a website, launched some like basic Google ads. Again, no visuals that really told, like no branded visuals, but like stock images, you know, so you can get like 80% of the way there, 70% of the way there, maybe less. Spun up AdWords, easiest, you know, if people are searching for coffee subscription and they're not buying this, then I'm like, okay. But we did pretty well out of the gate. Like the conversion rate was really, you know, like 3 or 4%. Cost per sale at the time was like $20-$30, and I was like doing the back of the envelope, like, oh, people wouldn't have to stay for like too crazy long.
Yeah. Get them for 6 months or something. You're in a healthy-ish place.
Like, not a bad spot. And that's all paid. And then you know, was like, I need to like deep dive into subscription stuff too. And so I read this really good book called The Automatic Customer.
Oh, I'm always looking for great books.
Yeah,
I've never heard of it.
It's kind of like, it talks about the 7 different kinds of subscription models. There's like the surprise box, where it's like the man crate, you know, where they send you a bunch of stuff, and like pros to that are that you get better margins. Cons to that are like you got to gamify retention, because you're not going to get, why would someone stay, how many axes or whatever things do they need? So they have to come up with like some way of doing like collectibles in there where you want to stick on, or, you know, like then there's like
the disappointment can be really high there, right?
It can be.
If you miss, because I had
if you miss
Stitch Fix, which was kind of a mystery box.
So that's curation.
Different. Curation.
So,
okay.
Well, and it's curation.
Sorry, I messed up your flow. Let's keep your flow, because you're
So
you're
there's surprise box.
Yep.
So the book is The Automatic Customer.
Automatic Customer.
John Wallerow, I think, is the author.
Okay. We'll find it and put it in show notes.
So there's like the surprise box. There's the curation box. So that's like your trunk clubs. And the key there is like obviously preference matching. There's consumption. So like Dollar Shave Club, you know, coffee's kind of the thing. Anything that you consume at some pace. So like for consumption subscriptions, and the book calls this out, it's like you got to nail like making sure people don't have too much or too little. And it's so overlooked.
It's so overlooked. The other thing that's overlooked, not only the too little, too much, is the sizing of your product.
Yeah.
I know people that would size a product and it's like, dude, that's 6 months of beard oil. Like, nobody's going to remember to come back and buy in 6 months. Like, the more you can get it close, like, and correct me if I'm wrong because you're the subscription expert, but the closer you can get to a monthly cadence, the better you are.
Yeah, and everyone's consumption's different depending on the product. Like, think of every single product having a different kind of distribution of consumption pattern. Coffee's got a wide one. And some people, they're a family of 6. They all drink coffee. It's like a family ritual. And those people will go through 8 bags a month.
I'm not even thinking the one-to-many. I'm just thinking one-to-one. That's interesting if you have multiple people consuming the product. I didn't think of that.
Well, so, and I think every space has a different band. But so there's surprise box, curation, consumption. There's a bunch of others, but those are the 3 that I remember. And the most powerful combination, in my opinion, is curation and consumption. Because if you're just curation, if you're a trunk club, that's nice, but how many clothes do you need, right? So you're not consuming it, you're not going through it.
Even if you hit, like, how many outfits can I wear? Like, so you're absolutely right. You bump up against that consumption barrier.
Curation is like something that drives premium.
Yes.
Price premium. Consumption is something that keeps people, right? So that combo is
I need to write on this. That is brilliant.
Well, and there's a lot of businesses that nail this, but
what are some ones that you like? They're doing
there's some
really good.
Spaces that I really like. I really like anything where you care a lot of, I'll take dog food.
Yeah.
You care a lot about what your dog eats, and let's say if we are the expert in, diets for your dog, you can personalize it. What breed is your dog? What do they struggle with?
But he has this business.
I mean, a lot of people have this business.
Yeah.
But they're all doing
brilliant.
super well.
Yeah.
So it's take that example. Okay, you want to make sure that you're getting the right information on the front end, so people feel like it's tailored to them, which again will drive a premium in price, and again set you apart from Amazon, which doesn't allow for these kinds of flows. You want to make sure you're matching the consumption.
Yeah.
The consumption pattern. If you do those 2 things well, and kind of, and it talks about all these different tactics to help with retention, and like a happiness bomb and all these, your first package, you give someone like an extra whatever, and
surprise and delight.
Talks about, so the first half of the book is about kind of the strategies for
the architectures, if you will, of subscription models.
Yeah, and then the second half is all about the economics, LTV to CAC, how to think about payback. It was truly
this
the
book
Bible.
Is like my love language.
There's 2 books that really, really were formative for me. That's one, and then the other one, this is book Scaling Up.
Why do I know that? Is that the one? There's a big arrow on the cover.
Yeah, I think it's Vern. I'm gonna butcher his last name. I think it's Vern something, but he's that book great. It's like a Bible for starting a business, man.
Curation and consumption subscription models.
Surprise box. There's a few others.
That is such a good framing, because the surprise box never really kind of floated my boat, because there was just so much vulnerability built into that business.
And you have to solve for retention. So, but how do you do it? The gamification is a big one. Collectible. What are the threads? What are the things that we know are human drivers to stick to something, right?
You're right on the thing for collectibles. I've really gotten back into.
You would do a shoe. I bet you would do I bet you would do a shoe of the month.
Where
they send you rare stuff.
Well, the problem with that is
what?
The curation.
Oh, to match your stuff.
The curation,
what if they gave you options?
Yeah, but at the same time, so this is actually a really good thought experiment. Yes and no.
I'm not a sneakerhead, so
I know.
I would never start.
I'm just working through this because this is a great thought experiment. I want you to come to me with the stories about the coffee.
Uh-huh.
I like to go hunt.
I see
for my sneakers.
That makes sense.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not weird. You want to be the protagonist there, right?
I want to be the finding the random grail, finding the story, hunting it down,
you're Indiana
grabbing.
Jones, man.
Yeah,
you want to be Indiana Jones, and your shoe is you're going to lift off the thing, and then the arrows are going to shoot at you.
Yeah, because
that's what you want.
Yeah, I got to put the other thing right back on.
That's why, why, and I think
that's such an interesting thought experiment.
I think the sneakerheads have this. That's why I lived in Boston for a while, and there's this shoe shop called Bodega, and it's you walk by it, it looks like a knockoff.
I have a couple of them. They did a collab with Nike.
Oh, it's so cool. You walk by the store, and it's it looks like a jank 7-Eleven, and you go in through the vending machine, and it's like dope. It's like their sneaker like drop shop. They do like all sorts of like limited release. Anyway, we're getting off topic, but which I'm prone to do. So
no. This is fascinating for me because if you would, on the outside looking in, what you just said makes tons of sense. Like, do I spend absurd amounts of money on sneakers? So there's a big retention LTV play. I'm very into sneakers. I love the story, but I want the hunt. Yeah. And so I think
collectors, I think, are like
it's a little different breed.
It's like put that one. Yeah.
That's a little different breed of.
But that's a nugget, man. It's interesting.
I mean, there's definitely something to be said about StockX does a really good job of highlighting curation for me, where I get most of my stuff. But it's still that it's almost, it brings up. So General Mills back in the '60s did a cake mix. You know the story? So they did a cake mix. Amazing. All you did was add water, bish, bosh, bosh, you make some cake. Fantastic. Absolutely flopped.
Okay.
They brought in this really high-level psychologist, figured out blah, blah, blah. What happened was baking this cake was a representation of care, of loving.
Yeah.
And at the time, this was a very woman-centric household. Women are still in the kitchen kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. And so they found out, okay, you know what? What we're going to do is take the pre-mixed egg out, and now you have to add an egg. Yeah. So you feel like you're part of the process.
Yeah.
And now, and then it just absolutely blew up. And so I think that's where the sneaker thing falls apart for me, is I need to be able to add the egg. I want to feel like I'm part of the process versus just giving it to me, versus the coffee stuff is fun because, one, I want the coffee, I want the back end stuff, and two, I love the story, but I don't have enough like vigor to actually put the effort into finding the coffee, finding the story. And so that, I think...
Well, maybe you don't feel like you could. Like access, you can't go shop. Like it's
the opportunity cost for me. It's just not there. Like I'd rather just give you money because you're way better at it than me have to deal with it.
Yeah, on consumables versus collectibles. It's interesting, man.
That's a really interesting thought experiment. Okay, so we found your business model.
Yeah,
what was it called again? Automatic buyer.
Automatic customer.
Automatic customer. Changed your life.
Great book. Great book. If you're gonna do a subscription business, and this guy makes the case that like, pretty much any business should consider becoming a subscription business.
Dude, that's my big 2023 prediction is paid communities and brand memberships. I think more brands are going to try and transition to memberships, and I think they should.
Yeah, it'll be. Yeah, I think if they do it, there's a very specific way that it probably needs to be done. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking like, if we were, if I was the CEO, if I was at the helm of something that was trying to do that, like, how would I think about how to build something that's valuable, how to build like a digital community? It's like one of the hardest.
Oh, it's super hard. But so, for example, I've been playing like friends with Jason Panzer. You ever heard of Hexclad? They make like super fancy cookware. It's like a La Crusade, Gordon Ramsay kind of stuff. Like, and for him, it's like perfect because you can have all these, like, you have this hub, which is like your cookware. These are like
there's a ton of content around that space. Yeah,
content, community, all these
sharing
things,
recipes, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Dude, you could get.
I want to make competition. I like competition. Yeah. I'd want to make like submit your recipes. We'll pick your favorite every week, and if you win, you get X.
Highlight it. Yeah. Come cook with us live on thing. There's all these things. You could even get to a place, if the economics worked out, that you could send food boxes to cut or cook. In the Hex class, like a HelloFresh kind of style or stuff like that. So
like a little recipe of the month.
Yeah, and I think that is, I think brand memberships are going to become a thing, because it just, there's a certain, like, when you have, and again, I think this is what you guys do so well, because I think of it more of as a membership than a subscription. And it might sound like semantics, but when you have a membership.
We call it a club for a reason.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. When you have when you have a subscription, that is a transaction. I have a subscription to AT&T. I hate AT&T, but I give them tons of money every month because I need my phone, I need my internet, and like it. But when you have a membership, it's almost like paying dues. You get you're part of the club, you're in the community, you're all these things.
That framing matters a lot.
It matters, right? Yeah. It sounds semantics, but it really matters, and I think you guys nailed that. Did you back into that, or was that always the impetus? Like when you started, you're like, dude, we need to really concentrate on the user having the best experience possible, and they have, like, because you just feel successful. Like again, I know I'm gassing you up here, but I do really think
I gotta live up to this.
Yeah,
man.
I do really love the idea of how, again, I'm a big story guy, and I think the more stories you can give your consumer to tell their wife, their husband, their significant other, their friends why they're so smart or why they're so cool or why like
make them the protagonist.
I'm exactly the hero in their own story, kind of the Rogan thing. You know this coffee I'm drinking? Oh yeah, it's actually Ethiopian. It comes from this region. It has these undertones. Blah 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 blah. You're like, oh, I didn't know you were such a coffee file. And you're like, oh yeah, actually I'm a Atlas Coffee Club member. You know what I mean? It sounds cheesy, dude, but it's a real thing, dude. It's a real thing.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, well, and you know, we want to go. That kind of thinking came on. Well, the name was Atlas Coffee Club for that reason, right?
Yes.
Like we want it to be something.
I guess, yeah. So for people that don't know, let's give the elevator pitch because we've kind of been talking around it. What is Atlas Coffee Club?
Atlas Coffee Club is a coffee of the month club where every month we send people coffee from a different country. And there's over 50 different countries that grow coffee. And so each month is kind of, you pop it open and there's, and each of our bags actually have kind of like different patterns and like stories to tell. We include a postcard just to remind you visually that like, hey, this isn't from here. And then, yeah, we talk about kind of the coffee history in that country, what you're going to taste. You know, our kind of motto is to take them there.
That's a bar.
And then the first person that we brought on the team, because, you know, it's just me working on, you know, John, my co-founder, was a Navy fighter pilot.
That is wild.
Yeah. So, I mean, long story short, like it was just kind of me, like from after, like, you know, he kind of helped with a lot of different things along the way. He would do like customer service, like nights and weekends and stuff.
A fighter pilot?
Yeah, man.
I'm just picturing this is just like Tom Cruise Maverick.
He got to meet Tom Cruise because he was a consultant for the movie. He's in the credits. Yeah, because he planned the routes. Like a lot of the routes that they do in the second movie, obviously the second movie, a lot of the routes that they did.
The second movie slapped.
Yeah, it was great. I had a high bar. It's rare that things get built up like that.
Totally.
I'm trying to live up to your intro into the pod, man. Like you built it up, but it's rare that happens.
What a random connect.
Yeah, man.
Because you have a fighter pilot, a Top Gun instructor running your support. You're running the whole business. So first hire was this guy named Jordan Rosenacker. Man, like, you know, we this is about, so again, I quit my job. I should say this. I quit my job in April. So had the idea in December of 2014, quit my job in April. Can I ask you kind of an intimate question and you can give me as much detail as possible, but like, was it like jumping off the cliff, burn the ships, or is it like, hey, you know, I had a little bit of a parachute for whatever reason?
I mean, it was burn the boats. Like,
you were all in.
I was all in. Like, liquidated my 401k. Like, did the whole thing.
Let's go.
We had about 50K. I say we. You always say we when it's just you. But
I used to run my own agency, and you can charge
you
people way more
when you say
we than I.
Yeah, it's funny.
That's awesome though. So this is it. You said, hey, like, you, obviously a bright guy, always could get back in the insurance game and stuff like that.
Well, that was it. Like when I quit, like Liberty Mutual, where I work, was a super progressive company. Like they were great. They were like, yeah, man, hey, like we support you. Like we're pumped for you. Like if you ever want to come back, we will take you back in a heartbeat. Amazing. And you know, so it was, yes, it was risky, but it was as much of a like, you know, falling back to a hammock as you can have. Now, I didn't mentally even want to frame it that way. Like I framed it as a burn the boats.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was like super fun and energizing. But after spending like a month or two, like, you know, going from a totally disciplined environment, show up to work at this time, leave at this time, to like make your own schedule, you know, show up and work. There's a million things you can work on. You know, like when you're starting a company, there's like a laundry list of things, and if it's just you know, it's tough. Personally, I also I work better when I'm working next to somebody.
Interesting.
As like some people could just lock themselves in their room, and go heads down.
Yeah.
I get too antsy, man. I'm just like, maybe it's because I drink too much caffeine. I just do better when I like have someone else's energy to kind of like build up and I think like I've always tried to be conscious of what is the best environment for me to be productive and in a good headspace. And like I used to kind of stigmatize it to myself and say like, oh, like, well, you just need to power through and work on your own. Don't be lazy. But it's not that. It's like it's really weird, and I actually just read some article in the New York Times about this. It's like people with ADHD, which I have, like there is a there is a term for when they like co-work with people, and like why that's like studied. It's like being studied now to be net more beneficial. I forget the name of it. Buddying maybe. I don't know. Anyway, for that and for a lot of reasons, like, you know, things that I wasn't good at, like a lot of I'm decent at creative stuff, but and creative execution.
Man, you're such a rare breed. Like the quant and the creative is
This is kind of what I'm saying is like I'm good. I'm not great at that.
I think you have taste, and that's what matters. I don't think you need to be the 0 to 1 creator.
Yeah.
But like the Steve Jobs of like, he wasn't creating, like Johnny Ive was the creative genius behind that, but Steve Jobs had the taste.
They created directive
like
versus creative.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's again rare to find a quant that has like. Usually the quant people I know dress like, you know, schlobs, and like they're because their headspace is just in a different world.
It's on one side.
The taste doesn't make sense to them. It's like, how do I calculate taste? Like the intangibles.
So, you know, quit my job in April, and then a friend of mine, he did like a bunch of branding stuff for like Spike Lee and a bunch of people. He was like really good at. He went to IU, a buddy of mine. You might even know him, Russell Marcus. Okay. Anyway, I called him up. I'm like, hey man, like, what are you up to? I've got this startup. Like, here's kind of the pitch. He's like, man, I don't have time. I'm like doing my own thing, but he's like, my roommate loves coffee. He's like, and dude, he's just, you're gonna love him. He's great, like good people. So like I took a call with this dude who I didn't know, and true to Russ's word, like Jordan was just like, yeah, vibe, and then just like super good energy. Loved the idea. Immediately was like firing off all these other things that we can do, and both of our leases ended at the same time. So both of our leases ended in August. So I met him on my birthday.
And you're still in DC or Boston?
I'm in Boston. So I take the train down to New York. We hang out, kind of pitch him on the idea, and kind of get all you know, excited about this thing. He's like, hey man, my lease ends here. And like, I've kind of got a fork in the road. Like, I can either take this gig with Project Runway, because he worked in TV production, or I can do this. He's like, well, and then he came up with this idea that we would take a road trip from New York out to LA, because my grandpa has a house in San Clemente, and he was like, hey, you can use it if you want. So like, we basically like road trip from New York to LA. Brewed in a bunch of cities along the way. And man, I don't give this trip enough credit. One, it was great. Like if you're starting a company with people and it truly is like a bootstrap risky thing, like you have to kind of be ride or die. Like you're asking someone to kind of, it's like a disciple thing. They're following you into the dark, right? And so it was really good from that perspective. Like him and I are still really, really good friends.
Yeah.
But it was also just like, think about all the time to talk. The most impactful part about that probably was just telling the brand story about 100 times to strangers.
Yes.
Yeah, because we not kidding, we brewed at National Geographic, we brewed at Geico, my old whip. We brewed, in all these places. We came to Austin because his girlfriend at the time lived in Austin. And there was so much, you just learn kind of what resonates with people. You could see it in their face, which is a missed thing in e-commerce. It's a missed thing in like a lot of, even if you do like a formal, qualitative interview with somebody, you're going to miss that organic, like, oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that. And like, you're going to learn even the best ways to frame things to get people excited. So that was such a cool, I haven't really ever reflected on that and distilled it down to like why that was so useful, that trip. But like, apart from the morale building and just like having a bunch of ideas, it was just like really understanding what people responded to about the brand.
Man, I couldn't agree with you more. There's a great framework called Jobs to be Done. And when you're doing the interview, so there's like a whole interviewing technique. And the too long didn't read is basically that you look for the emotion. Like once you see, because you can, like, people won't tell you with their words. They'll tell you with their, like when you see them light up, you're like, oh, this is from Indonesia. And like the head snaps, like, oh, yeah. There's a there. Like, you know what I mean? People care where it's from. They care about the story. And not only that, I think one of the biggest things in early stage startup, because it's a grind, is those little wins. It's almost, I don't have a kid. You recently, right? You have a kid?
No kid.
I
just got married.
That's right.
Yeah, one step at a time,
But supposedly, like when you have the kid in the 6 months or whatever, when it's just hell, but then that one little smile like brings you all back.
Yeah.
It's kind of analogous when you hit the customer or a prospective customer, and you're like, oh, there is something here. Like even if it's one person, like that just rejuvenates you. Like when we get some tweets on Twitter about Triple Well doing this for me and helping this business, like when you're down in the dumps or like, you know, it's not going to go right every time, especially early stage.
Well, and people who are unhappy are going to speak up like 5 times more often.
Loud minorities are one of the easiest ways to scale your business. So definitely take customer feedback, but some people just want to yell at the sky. And like you
we've
have
got
to,
some fun stories about that.
So you did your little Vision Quest road trip, end up in LA or San Clemente.
I'm going to, try to keep us linear, but you said something earlier about like the branding in the club, and like Jordan was really instrumental in 2 things. Well, one, I should call out, like early on, we tried to minimize costs as much as, you know, there's always a balance of like cost versus like the brand experience, right? And, you know, I was like coming from the dropship mentality, right? I'm like, oh, we got to keep costs down. And Jordan is like, well, man, anybody can say like coffee from around the world, but if we can show it, like if we can make it. And so he early on, like he like would sketch these different bag designs. He's like, what about this? Like, what if we made each bag different? And like it's an ops nightmare, right? You're ordering a rotating SKU every 28 days, and you're paying like twice as much per bag. And I'm just like, you know, looking at the bank account, looking at Jordan, looking at the bank account. But like, I'm so glad that I had.
He was right.
Oh, 100%. Oh, 100%. You know, and you know, we have healthy arm wrestles about these kinds of things all the time. But like, you know, he was in terms of like making it a club, like over the first couple, you know, 2 or 3 years, like, you know, we did a branding exercise. It was maybe one of my favorite meetings we've ever had as a company. And when I say company, it was like me, him, and one other guy. Just to you know, we have 50 plus now, so I got, you know, in my mind, it's like I got to put it in the right frame. We had this brand exercise, and he had been reading all these different books, and we were trying to kind of concise down what we do. Pure compression, where you don't lose the meaning of something, you can get it as small as it. So we were thinking through like, what's the right, like who are we to our customers? And he came up with coffee tour guides.
That's it.
And
I was
like,
call it a coffee concierge. Same thing.
Well,
a tour guide's even better.
The tour guide is someone who, like, you're going on this journey together. They're not pretentious. Like, coffee struggles with this problem.
Yes.
It is so unapproachable, is what they say. You go to a barista at like a nice coffee shop, and you know, it's not like, hell, let me help you learn. It's like, oh, you didn't know? You know, it's like, you don't know what an Americano is. That's not what a tour guide does. Like, a tour guide has no ego. A tour guide, if they're a good tour guide, they kind of stand out of the way, and you look at the view together, and they're here telling you as you're guiding you on the journey, right? So like,
they're experience generators.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I
that's a way better than concierge. Tour guides nailed it.
But yeah, he really helped us kind of like crystallize some of those things. And there's more work as a business that we can do to kind of make this more an adventure. I mean, trust me, we have so many ideas, man, like in terms of ways to build out the club part of the Atlas Coffee Club, right? Like,
I'm all for it.
Yeah. Anyway, so you know, he jumped on in June, and we kind of all, you know, it was me and him. We took that road trip to San Clemente, and then, you know, we're in San Clemente working on something, and I think I was like writing it was some like not the most important thing I could be doing, and it was taking me way too long because Shopify at the time didn't have a good CMS, didn't have a good way to write blogs. I think, if you can believe it, like they didn't care about blogs for a while. And so I had to teach myself how to code, and I'd already done that to some extent, like, but I was just beating my head against the wall doing this, and I was like, I got a buddy that I remember from Purdue. He was a wizard, like just truly, you know, like in the engineering world.
Yeah,
like,
you guys.
There are certain people that just can run laps around other people, and so I was like, Omar, I gave him a shout. I hadn't talked to him in like 6 years. It's like, what's up, buddy? Like, what are you doing these days? He's like, I'm out in Miami. You know, I was like, you know, club music playing in the background.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm out in Miami. I was like, hey man, I've got this project, like it's taking me forever, like, you know, and it wasn't the blog project, it was something else. I was like, I'll throw you, like, you know, I don't know how long it was gonna take and how much it was gonna cost, and I'm thinking like, this will take him 5 hours, like, you know, maybe I'll throw him like, I don't know, like $500-$600. He gets it done in like 30 minutes, and he's like, here you go. I was like, God, I shouldn't have done fixed rate, but he gets it done in like 30 minutes, and I'm just like, oh my God. Like, I think I had like him do like 2 or 3 things for us, and I was like, this is the leverage we need. Like, truly, like, crowbar to like whatever problem you have, like engineering leverage. So I was like, I need to get. We got, if Jordan and I are like a 1 and 2 man, band, I was like, I need to get this man to join the company. So went out. I moved in with him in Miami, in South Beach, Miami.
No.
I went to the belly of the beast.
Oh
and,
my God! I didn't know you did a stint in Miami. Oh
yeah,
my God.
well, I had to pull him out of his, favorite, scene, and then him, Jordan, and I all lived in my parents' basement for like 6 months.
No way.
Yeah,
the parents' basement,
dude. Well, because we were trying to save money, but we also wanted to be in the same place.
Dude, and you don't want to, spend money on an office. It's amazing.
Like at this point, the business is doing like, I don't know, like $150K a year. We're tiny, right? So we do that, and actually, like some of the best memories, because we would drive like 30 minutes, because my parents lived like out in the sticks in Arkansas, and we would drive to this co-working space. It was a 24-hour co-working space, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
Crazy in Arkansas. 24-hour co-working space. And we would work until like 2 a.m, and it was fun. Like it was like singularity of purpose. And we started getting like win after win after win. Like Jordan used to work in TV production, and he would get pitched ideas for TV shows all the time. And so he knew the anatomy of like a good pitch versus one that was just a generic one that went to like 300 studios, right? Like a good pitch was like personalized, like you knew it was written to you, not to some X, Y, and Z studio, and like gave the context as to why it was a good fit for you and was engaging and like, like packed some value in there, but wasn't too long. And so because he knew that, he was really good at pitching press, because he knew how to come across as like, hey, I'm a real human. Here's this idea. Like, and even how to frame what we do that was like in a really exciting way. And man, like that in that short stint of like 6 months, it was probably like 4 months that we lived in my parents' house. Like we got on like we were on the Today Show. We were, oh yeah, it was wild. Yeah. Jordan's grandma called him and was like, hey, you're on the Today Show. And I'm like, oh, she's got it wrong. Like there's no way, right? Like this is like, and I pull up Google Analytics, and sure enough, there's like, I don't know, like 10,000 people on our website. And those things never drive as many sales as you think. But what they do is you can say now featured on the Today Show on your site. You get the SEO, they link to it, right? And then and then there's the traffic from the day. And like from there, it was kind of this snowball of like, we got a lot of PR. Like he's just a PR machine. Yeah. Which helped our SEO, which like really started to like grow our big organic base of traffic. And so like that was when we went, we tipped up from there pretty significantly. And then we all basically, because Jordan's girlfriend lived here at the time, he found this really cool spot on Holly Street on the east side down the street. We all lived together from there. And then like, again, like just like 3 dudes doing 8 jobs and working like 80 hours a week. Like we just made a bunch of strides, man. Like that was the early days.
That is cool. And I'll tell you what, man, because we felt a little bit of that magic early on here at Triple Whale. It doesn't stay, and not in a good or a bad way, but there's just such a unique moment when there's 3 to 5 people in a room, to your point of like, we got to hunt and kill to eat. And
it's the singularity of purpose.
Oh, dude, it's and I just remember looking around where it'd be like me, Lex, Kevin, Colin, Tommy, and like, this is cool, man. Like, it's not going to stay like this. Like, cause we're like $150, 170 employees now across 4 cities. Like, yeah, it's crazy now. We're like a small, big company, but that singularity of purpose is something that is, it's almost like scuba diving. It's indescribable. Yeah. It's such a cool feeling, but
there's a saying, it's like the absence of alternatives is freeing or something. I don't know. Yeah. There's something there. I forget the quote, but
yeah. Okay, and so now we'll fast forward to you guys have your own. Like, yeah. I mean, like you're not small anymore, candidly. I mean, you're still scrappy. Don't get me wrong, but like you have your facilities. You have where are we at now?
We're 50 plus employees. One of the threads kind of behind the scenes was us in-housing operations.
Love that.
And so like there was kind of different.
Kind of back to your roots.
Yeah, well,
you started with your warehousing optimizations,
that's interesting. Yeah. What's interesting about it is like, again, like I never set out to be like, I want to run everything in house, like buying the coffee, all this stuff, like, but just, over time, it just made intuitive sense. It's like, oh, okay, we'll save $2 a bag if we do it ourselves. We have more control over what we source. We know more about the stories. We can throw more things in the box. Like all these things kind of, as much of like a pain as it is to do. I mean, trust me, like, you see all this gray hair, like most of these are ops related. Like it's not fun necessarily, but what it allows you to do as a business, like, it's amazing.
I do. Like, if you can get to that place, everybody that has gotten to that place is super happy. It's just crossing the chasm can be very challenging. Going from like a 3PL to like, oh, we're going to run everything in house.
The two biggest chasms over time as you grow to cross are operations and org structure as you grow. Like when you're small, man, like less than 8 people, 1 manager, it's like the likelihood of a telephone game going wrong is so much less. Who reports to who is so much easier. Like there's just like really ugly phases of growth where you're in between phases. And this book, so the other book that I mentioned, Scaling Up, Vern Harnish is the guy's name.
We go.
I was like, I'm going to get his name.
The job is kicking in.
It's great, man. It breaks like scaling a company into 4 buckets. It's like people, strategy, execution, and cash. The execution one was really good in terms of like when to meet, how often to meet, like how often you do goal setting. When you're younger, you want to pulse faster because strategy can change. But as you get bigger, you would expect like maybe once a quarter now for goal setting instead of once a month or once a week, like not once a week.
No, I'm with you on that because I almost think of a business as like a human, right? And you're changing so much in those early stages that you might not be the same company you were 6 months ago. So there's this long-term planning doesn't really land. It's like baby clothes. Like you're going to grow out of these in 6 months. So like, let's keep it tight. And then eventually I think getting that quarterly cadence is ideal where it's like, because 3 months is long enough for things to materialize, but not long enough to scuttle the company. Like, it's this nice
enough time for new ideas to kind of come in and be
like
internalized.
You can validate or like invalidate. This thesis works. This one is bad. Let's kill it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I love that. I need to read these 2 books.
The Scaling Up is like, because they don't teach, and this
it's
is
not on the brochure, bro. Like those ugly moments are real.
Well, entrepreneurship just in general, like there's not very much formal education around it. Right? Like maybe I'm sure it's better now than it has been. Same with a lot of things, but it is as close to a textbook for how to like be at the helm of a growing, I don't want to say rapidly growing, just growing company. And I think what it does is it in part through one of the lessons in the book, which is like, you're going to go through these, they call them valleys of death, where like there are awkward phases for your business where like there really is no good. You just have to do the best. There is no perfect org structure for your size at a given phase. Like when you're at, let's say, 12 people, okay, well, one person might report to 2 different people. It's really ugly. And even just reading that, like, man, like one of the most important things as a founder for me is just like fellowship with other founders because it's isolating, man. Like, and you're going to go through stuff that everyone else, a lot of other founders will, but you won't necessarily, getting advice from other people who've gone through that same thing, what they did, which first normalizes that the same problems you have are common, and second, like gives you helpful like playbooks. Either like, don't do this because I did this and it was terrible, or here's what I did and it worked out pretty well.
Man, I couldn't agree with you more. There's if you can get into a group text with a bunch of founders, it really is the best thing where you can just toss in an idea and be like, hey guys, what do you think about this? And you get all these different perspectives and well,
and the misses are just as important as the wins. Like I want to hear like where someone stepped on a pothole.
I think they're more. I think they're more important, honestly. Like I think the vulnerabilities.
There's a saying. It's like it's not a Russian saying.
Oh man,
but it's still good.
We already hit a Russian quota.
Yeah, we hit the Russian quota. It's a thorn of experience is worth the wilderness of warning.
Wow.
So like when you that's Jordan. I got to give Jordan credit for that one. I don't think he came up with it, but he's the one who planted that seed. I mean, like, you may hear, oh, don't do this, it's not good to do this, but then, like, God, once it happens and you're like, God, I should have just listened to conventional wisdom.
Dude, I couldn't agree with you more, because like, from my experience on the B2B SaaS, like, there's a reason why a lot of B2B SaaS companies look exactly the same. They're homogeneous.
Yeah.
Like there's kind of this regression to the mean with everything. And like, you definitely want to stand out and stick out, but like there's that kind of Lindy principle of like, if something's been around for a real long time, it's probably because everybody's been through this idea maze.
Yeah.
And they end up at the same spot. And if you can just be like, oh, instead I can just shortcut it versus like having to
stand on the shoulder of giants and find your battles to innovate.
That's a perfect way to put it. Dude, this has been amazing. You ready for some rapid fire? And we'll wrap up? Okay. How do you take your coffee?
Oh, black all the way.
No, like make it. Is it drip? Is it pour over? Is it...
How do I make it? Yeah, I've got a V60 at home, which is like a kind of pour over.
Yeah. You travel with that or no?
No, not usually. I mean, part of what's fun about traveling is like seeking out, just like you and your shoes. Like I want to seek out different coffee shops.
You want to put the egg in the cake?
I want to put the egg in the cake. I want to find, I like to see like the best shops in different places I go to.
There's an adventure like experience to it, right? Where it's like the tour guide can be really fun for certain things, but sometimes you just want to get the machete, and go find it. Yeah,
I want to see it.
I love it. Favorite coffee shop in Austin?
Probably Fleet.
Yeah,
either Fleet or Proud Mary. Proud Mary's pretty good. They've got a deluxe pour over menu that it's like, you're gonna pay like $15 a cup, but it's really fun.
Yeah. It is what it is. Favorite place to travel to and why?
Man, I'll start by saying I haven't traveled enough to give a.
You got the European trip with wifey coming up though.
Yeah. Favorite place. I went to Guatemala on an origin trip.
I went to. Buddy got married in Antigua.
Oh, it's beautiful. That's a beautiful place to get married. They got the church.
Yeah, they broke my. That's where kind of like my coffee mind blew up there too. Where it's just like stunning coffee everywhere. And it's like $1. It's crazy.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, there's a lake out there called Lake Atitlan, and it's
amazing.
It's insane, man. It's like they dub it like the most beautiful place in the world. Like,
I should have went to that.
It's super cool. So that was probably my favorite recent trip.
No, that's a great pick. Favorite newsletter or podcast?
Man, I don't do too many. I used to be a lot more on the e-com podcast and stuff. The things I've been.
It can be any podcast.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be
I
DCC
do a lot of like
specific.
politics related stuff. There's the one called Hacks on Tap that I like. It's like really it's these two guys who used to do like different political campaigns, and they're like analyzing current events and like through their frame of experience. It's David Axelrod and Mike Murphy, and it's cool. It's good. I got into it like a couple election cycles ago, and I just put it on and listened to it.
I love that. What region of the world is your favorite coffee from? I know you love all your children.
Yeah,
but if you have to save one, where are you going?
The way I've heard it framed to me, the best version of this question is like, if you could only get coffee from one country.
Oh, that's good.
And the reason that's a different answer is because Ethiopia is the birthplace of coffee, and like how like the Galapagos Islands have like all these different, because it's like there's like a million different variations of like everything, like birds and all these different things. Same thing's
Charles
true.
D.
So yeah, same thing is true with coffee. Like all the varietals in coffee are there, and so like, in terms of the variety of taste you can get from just one place, it's Ethiopia, and the quality is just amazing.
I love that. So it's almost like if you're thinking about music, like there's not only playability, but it's also like the hit songs on there are still hitters. Okay, I like that. The Ethiopian. Okay, we'll wrap up with 2 questions. First one, what's the nicest thing someone's ever done for you?
Oh man, that's a heavy hitter. Everything else has been easy. When I graduated high school, my dad's dad died when he was really young, and so it's really interesting to kind of like think about my upbringing, because he was kind of like a first-time father. Didn't have a lot of. I was the first born anyway. But one of the things he did for me was he got all of the kind of adult people that I looked up to as a senior in high school, and he got them all around one table to kind of like talk about like, hey man, you're going to do great things, all these different things.
That's beautiful, man.
And yeah, it was great. It was like
a cool exercise.
It was great, and it was really kind of uplifting, and yeah, I don't know, tough to top that.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Shout out Papa Mike. Last question. You can have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, fictional or non-fictional. You're sitting at a 4-person table. You're sitting at the head. You get 3 invites. Who's getting the invite?
3 people in all of history?
Oh, fictional and non-fictional as well. So dead or alive, you can do fake characters.
It's like asking people what their favorite song is.
Yeah, it's constraints. There's constraints though.
I'll keep it. I'm gonna put limiters on the question. I'll keep it to the entrepreneur world.
Oh wow!
Just for me.
Okay.
Just for this. I really want to meet Mark Lohr.
Yep.
He's I mean, you think about the diapers.com story and like being a loss leader online. It's
Jet.com.
Oh, yeah. His story's great. Now he's building cities.
Oh my gosh. This guy's prints money. And arguably Jet.com was a great acquisition for Walmart. It kind of, leveled the Walmart.com to Amazon.com. He made a grip on diapers. Incredible human.
I mean, this one's going to be like pretty basic, but I'd love to pick Elon Musk's brain.
Yeah.
I might just take more conversational time with those two instead of picking it.
I've never had anybody cut out the third
I'm just
seat.
like, I'm just thinking like if I had to spread the combo around 3, then I don't know. I mean,
no philosophical bent, no mathematics,
I told you I'm just
economist.
Okay, maybe Richard Feynman.
Have to be, but what a wild dude. Have you read his bio?
He has a
memoir.
What is that?
The nicest guy in the hello, my name my name Richard Feynman. I can't remember.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Feynman.
Yes,
or something. Yeah,
yes.
I haven't read it.
It's wild.
My brother's a big.
It's a wild. Brilliant, dude.
Yeah.
He used to. One of the crazy stories in there was
Tim Ferriss. He'd be another one.
Okay,
yeah.
Come on.
He's here in Austin.
So, yeah, no. So you bring him.
I'd probably boot Feynman just because
to keep it
entrepreneur based, and he's such an inspo for me, man.
Unbelievable.
Like, I probably wouldn't have done
the peanut galleries over here in.
I know you're
arms.
like not gonna. It could be anybody, Mike. I'm not judging.
What? Judging what? But there was Richard Feynman's bio is fantastic. It's really interesting, and he has the Feynman technique of basically if you can't teach somebody something to a 5 or 10-year-old, you don't understand it. And I think he was just a brilliant dude, man. He Los Alamos, he did a bunch of crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's an art to simplifying things down to distilling them down to the.
That's the Einstein, right? Like make it as simple as possible, but no simpler.
Yeah, that goes back to the compression.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or the. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. It's a Da Vinci. Dude, this has been one of my favorite podcasts ever.
Oh, thanks.
I didn't know so much about your journey.
About Breakfast Club, and
I know
we covered a lot.
What a crazy journey you've been on.
Yeah,
I'm so proud of you, man.
I just made up a whole fake past in the past to you, so that this would be all new for you.
You know, it landed. It worked.
Yeah, I didn't grow up in the Philippines.
The ruse. The ruse.
He brought me on to tell this crazy, awesome story, and it was a different one than you expected.
Breakfast Club in Boston. Unbelievable. How can people find you? How can they get more involved with the Atlas Coffee Club? Plug whatever you want this time.
It's just atlascoffeeclub.com.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is really, really good coffee. I know I'm biased, but it is really good, and it's fun.
I love it.
Especially if you're just getting into coffee to learn.
I love it. Easy peasy. Just go on the site, throw your stuff in, subscribe, and off you go. Amazing. Go subscribe. Go get you some amazing coffee. You're kind of low key on the Twitters, right? You're a little bit killers moving silence.
The personal brand stuff for me has never really been the itch I wanted to scratch. This is the first podcast I've ever done.
Really?
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, man.
You've kind of pulling it out for me. Well, it was a fantastic one. You are an absolute natural. Go check out Michael, all of his awesome stuff, atlascoffeeclub.com. We are triplewell.com if you want to get the best in the business and make more monies on your Shopify store. We also have a fantastic newsletter that goes out every Tuesday, Thursday called Whale Mail. Go check that out. And then we have a sister show called Ad Spin where we get really deep in the weeds on tactics with Ashwin Walwani, the CMO over Avi, co-host that. And then this will be coming out later, so you guys don't need to worry about Blue Whale Group and or Chicago Roadshow. But we appreciate you guys being listeners. If you do want to watch this and see Michael's beautiful face and hair versus listen to his wonderful voice, you can go to youtube.com/triplewhale. All the podcasts are up there. And dude, this is wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for taking the time and coming in.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, that's another one in the books. Please leave a review and subscribe. If you love us, it helps out and saves a unicorn every review. So thanks, guys. We'll see you on the flip. Bye-bye.